Hey, this is Maria. Welcome back to my studio for part two, where we're going to make the knotted necklace to this pendant. And I'd like you to check out the description below. You'll have a link to my blog where I'll have all of the tools and materials that you'll need. I found this braided cotton cord at the craft store and thought that this would be really a nice color combination with that turquoise and green and orange. And I want to just kind of give you a design tip. When you're working with polymer clay, it might be easier to start with finding your cording or your beads and then match the clay to it versus the other way around, because you can always mix your clay. So I've got this cord and I'm going to measure out 24 inches, and I'm going to take 3 strands of each color, so I'll have a total of 9 strands. So I'll just go ahead and measure those out and make sure that I've just cut them all the same length, and then I have my 9 strands. Now I've made for you a little template to show you the knotting structure. So you'll see the 9 cords and you'll see how I placed each of the beads. Now I have to be honest with you, you don't have to be this precise. You can be a little bit more casual about it, or bohemian if you like that term. But I went ahead and did a more structured approach to this. So I've actually measured out the beads. So I have this gridded glass mat, or you could use a paper grid. And I've got my paper, and I've just laid out my cords. And now I am going to go about making the knots and threading the beads. So one thing I wanted to share with you about making knots, I'm using a knitting needle. You could use any kind of tool that you might have, and if you place that in the middle of the knot, you'll be able to snug the knot up against that tool, and you'll get the knot a little more precisely placed. So make a knot, thread a bead, and make another knot on the other side of the bead. And it's really as simple as that, and just following the pattern for each of the beads. So I've done the color combination and the pattern for you. And you're able to download that off of my blog when you go over to that, so you'll have the pattern. And this is what it looks like when it's all beaded. And again, you don't have to be this sort of precise about it. You could just randomly make your knots. I think the only thing is to go about 4.5 inches from each side of center, and kind of keep your beads in that format or that length, so that you have a 20-inch necklace at the end. So I'm just taping up the middle so I can keep the middle while I make the rest of my knots, and centering them. I just kind of straightening out any of the cords that might have got a little out of whack. And I'm going to tie just an overhand knot at the end of each one of those bead segments, and it's 4 1/4 inches actually. And you can see here I'm just sort of making sure that the cords are evenly spaced, and I'll just do a simple overhand knot with all of those threads, the cords at one time, and just pull those through, and then kind of do a measurement, and I can adjust that knot a little bit so that I have 4 1/4 inches there, and then tighten it up, pull any threads through. I don't want to make it real tight, but I want it to be reasonably neat. And I will do that on the other side. Okay, I've got my knots on both sides, and they're looking reasonably spaced. So now I'm going to go ahead and just place my pendant there, and I think that'll look really nice right in the middle there. And I'm going to go ahead and finish up the ends. So to do the ends, we're going to measure about 5 inches from the knot, because this overall length of this necklace is going to be about 20 inches when you add the end caps and the clasp. And I've got some 22 gauge wire, and I'm going to wrap it at that mark and do a few wraps and clamp that down, so I'm really making sort of a coiled clamp here, coiled clasp, part of the clasp. And I'm just going to remeasure that. It's looking pretty good. And now I can cut off all the excess that I've got there. And I'll cut it really close to the wire. And I will use some hypo cement to put at the end of that wire, and that'll hold it onto the end cap as well as hold the pieces together. So I'll thread the additional wire through, and I probably have about 4 inches of wire, and I'll just thread that on, and the glue will set up inside the cap. And now I'm going to go about 1/4 of an inch, make a 90-degree bend, and then make my loop and wrap that wire around. So this is a wrapped loop, and I'll wrap that wire around 4 times. And cut off any excess. And then I will use my pliers to just tighten that down so that there's not a sharp point sticking out. And there you go. I'll do the same thing for the other side, and now I'm going to add the toggle clasp. So I've got a couple of jump rings, and I will open up those jump rings through the loop on the end of that necklace, and then thread the first piece of the toggle, and then same thing, another jump ring on the other side for the second piece of the toggle. And close that up. And you can see that that makes a nice, pretty clasp. So I think that looks nice. Now we're going to add the pendant. And again, we've got that pinch bail, so now I'm just adding a jump ring and thread all of my cords through right in the center and add the pendant. And that finishes up that piece. I think it turned out really cute. I hope you enjoyed this project of using the fluid acrylic paints to make a nice veneer and a pendant, and then the knotted beaded necklace. Thanks for joining me in my studio. I really appreciate it. Please consider subscribing, giving me a thumbs up, or leaving me a comment. I really appreciate hearing from you. As always, thanks for joining me in my studio, and take care.